Likutei Sichos, Chelik Tezvav, volume 15, the second Sicha for Chanukah. This is a Sicha discussing a very interesting rule in the Rambam, which discusses a situation in which one has enough money for either Chanukah candles or the Shabbos candles when they both coincide. And also from the particulars of the expression of the Rambam and the choices of his examples, we will actually come to a deeper understanding and appreciation of the concept, the idea of the candles of Chanukah. Just a general thing worthwhile to know before we begin the Sicha, the reason for why we light Shabbos candles. This is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. This is a mitzvah which the sages enacted. And the primary reasons given for it is either because of shalom bayis, peace in the home, that it says, quote, shelo yikoshel be'etza b'ev, and that a person should not stumble over an object, a large object, let's say a piece of wood or a stone or something, thus creating some kind of discord in the home. Or another reason that's given is because this falls into the category of oinik Shabbos, or the pleasure of Shabbos, because the expression in Rashi is b'nei beisoy mistarim leisha v'chashach, because the people in the household will actually have discomfort or tsar, they'll have pain in sitting in the darkness. Another thing which we should be familiar with is the concept of erasing God's name for the purpose of ascertaining the status and clarifying the situation with the saitov. If there's a wayward woman and it's not clear exactly if something unclean has transpired, so the Torah says that you take a parchment, a scroll, and you write down the verses as dictated in the Torah, which includes writing Hashem's holy name, and then later, after it dries, that gets scratched off, that gets scraped off, erased, that is, into a cup of water, which she has to drink, and that does the checking, so to speak, of this woman. And that is for the purpose of ultimately bringing peace between husband and wife. So let's go into it. In the end of the laws of Chanukah, the Rambam says as follows, that if one had before him Ner Beisai, literally translating the candle of his home, meaning the Shabbos candles, and Ner Chanukah, that means he doesn't have enough money to purchase both. He can only do one or the other. Or, another example he gives, if somebody has Ner Beisai, if he has money sufficient enough to either purchase a candle for Shabbos or wine for Kiddush of Shabbos, Kiddush of the day. Then says the Rambam, Ner Beisai Koidem, the candle for his home, meaning the Shabbos candle, Koidem, comes first, because, says the Rambam, Shalom Beisai, because of the peace of his home. And then he continues and he says, because we see that God's name was erased in order to bring peace between husband and wife. And then he continues and he says, moreover, great is the peace, quote, that the entire Torah was given to bring peace into the world. As it says, that all its ways are ways of pleasantness and all its paths are paths of peace, referring to the Torah. Now, the source for the Rambam's words is actually in the Gemara. The Gemara in Masechah Shabbos, which it says over there, Ner Beisai Adif Mishum Shloim Beisai, that the candle of Shabbos, the candle of his home, is Adif, takes priority, is greater because of this idea of Shalom Beisai. So now we have to understand, there are many questions that the Rebbe asks here. Number one, what forced the Rambam exactly to add this whole explanation that the name of Hashem is erased to bring peace, and so on and so forth. And then he goes even more, and he adds another thing, this whole idea that the Torah was given to bring peace in the world. In other words, why wouldn't it be sufficient to just say that the reason why the candle of Shabbos takes first place over the Chanukah candles is because it brings peace? Why isn't it sufficient to just leave it at that? Another thing that needs to be understood, when he brings this proof, he backs it up with saying that you erase God's name in order to bring peace. It seems like he's comparing oranges and apples. I mean, bringing peace between husband and wife is actually a very, very, very heavy thing. This is a very big thing. This is an extremely important objective. To prevent a divorce, to prevent the disruption of family life, to encourage and to bring about a continuum of this family life and thus the offspring that would come from it. How can you say how can you compare it to the candles of Hanukkah? How can we bring from that a proof for the Hanukkah candles that that Shabbos candles takes priority, comes first before Hanukkah candles? It seems like one has, this has great severity. This carries great weight over the Shabbos candles, which is just merely another mitzvah of bringing light into home. That's one question. The second question is, why in the Gemara, in the Talmud, in other words, in the source from where the Rambam brings it, these two things about the contrast between the Shabbos candle and the Chanukah candle, and then the contrast between the Shabbos candle and the Kiddush of Shabbos, are actually brought in two separate stanzas. Whereas the Rambam bunches it all together. He bundles it all together and he brings it in the same statement, in the same sentence, as if they were one thing. We need to understand, why is that? And another thing is, although it may seem like just a minor nuance, but perhaps this is something telling. Because in the Gemara, in the source of the Rambam's halacha, over there it says, Ner Beisai Odif, that the candle of Shabbos, the Shabbos candles are Odif, they take priority, they're better, they're greater, they're greater, they're more than. Whereas the Rambam only says that they are Koidem, that they just come first, that they come first in order. So is there anything in that? Does that tell us something? Says the Rebbe, to understand all this, first need to add something that's actually very curious and perhaps very obvious. Why in the first place is this discussion taking place in Hilchas Chanukah, in the laws of Chanukah? It would seem more appropriate for this halacha, the whole entire din, to appear in Hilchas Shabbos, in the section in the Rambam which discusses the laws of Shabbos. Not in Hilchas Chanukah, not in the laws of Chanukah. And interestingly, not only does the Rambam bring it here and discuss it at length, he doesn't even make a mention of it at all in the laws of Shabbos. Why would he do this? The answer is because the Rambam himself, in the laws of Shabbos, he actually explains, in other words, his opinion is that what is really the premise, what is the reason for the institution of Shabbos candles? He says because it's Bechlal Oinik Shabbos. It fits into the category, it falls into the category, that is, of the one has to have pleasure on Shabbos. Or he also says an expression of this contributes to the, quote, honor of Shabbos, which is in the same category. So he doesn't mention at all the whole idea of it bringing peace in the home. That's true that it does bring peace in the home, but that is not the essential reason. This is not, so to speak, the status, the essence of the mitzvah, according to the Rambam. Now, once we know that, now there becomes a difficulty. Therefore, there's some kind of challenge here. There's some kind of difficulty. The question is, what is this idea that we say that the reason why Shabbos candles take priority over Chanukah candles is because of Shalom Bayis, because of peace in the home? The question is, according to the Rambam himself, the candles of Shabbos have nothing to do with peace in the home, or at least that's not their main objective. That's not their main reason. It's just a, so to speak, derivative or fringe benefit of them. But that's not what they're about. Therefore, the Rambam was compelled to address this and answer it by writing this in Hilchos Chanukah to tell us, and also adding that the reason why we see, or how we know that Shalom Bayis takes priority, takes precedence over other mitzvahs, is because of this whole idea that Hashem even allowed for his name to be erased. In other words, to tell us the following, that the reason why the candles of Shabbos take precedence over the candles of Chanukah, this stems from the fact that Shalom, peace, bringing peace, the concept of peace in general, note the word in general, is of the greatest value. In other words, that the status, it gives us the status that Shalom, when you say that something is being done because of, to encourage peace, to bring peace, the idea of it is, the interpretation of it is, not that you're pushing away one mitzvah in order to fulfill another. It's not that one mitzvah is negating the other. It's that in general, the whole idea of mitzvahs in general, says the Rambam, all mitzvahs is, quote, to bring peace, is to generate more peace. And therefore, when for whatever reason, one says this mitzvah takes precedence to the other, you're not pushing away the other mitzvah. What you're just saying is that essentially they're both leading up to the same objective, which is to bring peace in the world. It's just that in this particular situation, this mitzvah will come first over the other, but you're not negating the other mitzvah because you're observing the same thing. You're reaching the same objective, the same goal of bringing peace in the world, but you're just doing it now, not by that means, but by this means. And therefore, he brings the proof from erasing the name. We'll see how apropos it is and how exactly it fits in. You see, when you erase the name of Hashem, it's not that Hashem says, okay, I allow you to erase my name. Okay, you can now erase it in order to bring peace. It's more than that. We see that there's a positive action. There's not just a passive thing, but there's something positive that takes place over here. There's an assertive action that takes place. Because in order to erase that name of Hashem, you don't just take a passage from the Torah that has already been written. Rather, you write it for this purpose. In other words, you do an act of a mitzvah in order to later erase it and to bring peace between husband and wife. And this shows us how immense and how great this concept of peace, of shalom, that really is the purpose and objective of the entire Torah. That it becomes, so to speak, a mitzvah in itself. That you have to actually write this Megillah, this scroll, with Hashem's name in its entire holiness, as you would write a Torah, as you would write tefillin, as you would write any time you write Hashem's holy name, and with the intent and purpose of erasing it. And now we can also appreciate why the Rambam changes that expression. And even though he's quoting from the Talmud, but he doesn't say Ner Beisai Odif, like the Talmud says, that the Shabbos candles are Odif, that they are better, that they are greater than, but rather he says Koidem, that they just take precedence, they come before. Because he's telling us it's really essentially all the same thing. It's not like one mitzvah is greater than the other, and therefore it can squash the other mitzvah, it can negate the other mitzvah. But rather that they're essentially all the same thing, but in this particular case, this will take precedence. You can't do both, so you'll have to do this one comes first, and therefore you're going to in actuality, you're going to do this one and not the other one. And in order to better understand this and to better clarify this, that you're not pushing away a mitzvah, you're not negating a mitzvah for the benefit of the other, but rather they're really essentially all doing the same, and it's just that it happens to be that one is coming before the other. Now we understand why he adds, and he says that the entire Torah was given in order to bring peace in the world. In other words, every single mitzvah essentially is to bring peace in the world. And therefore, it doesn't really matter which mitzvah is what. Every single mitzvah has the same objective. And therefore, when you do one mitzvah instead of the other mitzvah, you're really observing and reaching the same goal at the end of the day. And now we can understand also why he puts in the concept of the contrast between the candles of Shabbos and the Kiddush in the same stanza. Because it's not two separate things. It's not for two separate reasons that the candles of Shabbos come first. It actually fits into the whole discussion. This is all one and the same concept. Again, back to the point that any mitzvah that needs to be pushed away because of Ner Shabbos, because of the candles of Shabbos, again, it's not pshat that you're pushing away a mitzvah, that you're negating a mitzvah. It all fits into the same idea that they're all about bringing peace in the world. And in this case, you're going to bring peace in the world, not by making Kiddush or not by lighting Chanukah candles, but you're going to do it by lighting Shabbos candles. And now we have a better appreciation why the Rambam wrote it in Hilchas Chanukah. Because the whole idea of Chanukah is not just another individual mitzvah. It's not just another particular mitzvah, another one of the many, many mitzvahs in the Torah. But rather, the whole story of Chanukah actually connects to the general idea of Torah, to the whole purpose to the whole concept of Torah. Why? Because the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Chanukah, in describing the events that led up to the miracle and what we are celebrating exactly, in other words, he wants us to know that when we light our Chanukah candles and when we say Al Hanisim, we need to be aware of, we need to understand what we're celebrating. The Rambam goes into detail and explains to us that the issue was that the enemies were trying to undermine, they were trying to cut down, they were trying to abolish the entire Torah and the entire religion. And therefore, Chanukah is a very, very general concept when it comes to Torah, and it connects to the general concept of Torah, which is peace. So here we get, expressed that all mitzvahs are essentially one theme, one idea, and Chanukah is not just another one of them, but Chanukah in general represents all of them, because Chanukah is what defended all of them and what brought about the continuance of observance of all of them. So now we can understand from all of this that there is a special connection between the concept of shalom and peace and Chanukah. And we'll understand it by looking in general at, mitzvahs. When you look at mitzvahs, because we said a purpose of mitzvahs is peace. In general, mitzvahs can be divided in two categories. You have the positive and you have the negative. Positive meaning that there's an action that you have to take, which generally this is the mitzvahs aseh, the positive commandments. And then there is a kind of a negative thing, which you do something or you don't do something in order to negate the bad. Not so much to generate good, but to crush down, to push away the bad. If we look on Shabbos versus Chanukah, Shabbos really is a very positive thing. Shabbos is a kind of positive commandment. Although it has many aspects of it, if not, in fact, most aspects of it seem to be in the category of the negative commandments, not to do this, not to do that, all the 39 tasks and all the derivatives, that's true. But the main idea of Shabbos, the main concept of Shabbos is to rest on Shabbos, to observe Shabbos, which is a positive thing, to bring about the calmness, the restfulness of Shabbos. Whereas Chanukah, although it has certainly a very positive aspect to it, especially considering that Chanukah, you have to publicize the miracle. There's a positive aspect to it that you have to light the candles and make sure that they're seen and make sure that everybody is aware and knows of the miracles that took place. But yet, the whole idea of Chanukah came about as in an act of negativity to negate the enemy, as the Rambam himself explains, to crush down the enemy, to bring down the enemy, and thus to save Torah and its observance. Now we can appreciate. Therefore, when it comes to the question, to the issue, which one shall come first, which one over the other, which is Shabbos versus Chanukah, candles of Shabbos versus candles of Chanukah, there we can understand that since in actuality, Shabbos is ultimately, essentially of the positive nature, and it brings peace, although Chanukah also brings peace, but it's essentially still of the, so to speak, the negative nature. Therefore, in this case, Shabbos will actually take priority. Shabbos will come first. And this is where he brings the proof. Again, we go back to the erasing of the name, because it's not just about erasing the name, which is an act of negativity, so to speak, but it's actually something that starts before that, which is an act of positiveness, of a positive writing the name of Hashem in order to erase it. In other words, the writing really essentially is what sets in motion this positive action to later bring about peace. And then he adds, of course, that the entire Torah is there really to bring peace in the world. That, in other words, what he is saying with that is that the Torah is not just there to generate just more godly energy and holiness in the world, but it's actually there to bring peace in the world. What peace is referring to? What kind of peace do you need? Well, think about it. There's really a constant struggle, so to speak, a constant debate in existence. Because on the one hand, you have the Torah, you have Hashem, you have holiness, you have the fact that Hashem runs the world. But on the other hand, when you look at the world, it seems to negate it. There seems to be a struggle here. The world conceals godliness. The world does not allow us to see godliness. And in fact, the world has so many aspects of it in which you can actually use to, God forbid, argue against godliness. And therefore, what is the Torah here? The Torah is here to bring shalom, to bring peace. By us doing Torah mitzvahs, we actually reveal godliness into the world, thus bringing peace. Peace you need when you have two opposites. When you have one opinion, you don't need peace. When you have two negating opinions, you have two opposite forces, that's when you need to bring them together and make peace. So over here too, so to speak, the entire Torah is here to bring peace. It's all a positive objective of bringing peace into the world, of bringing two things together, which although of course we see it in Chanukah, and this is what happened in Chanukah, but still when it comes to Chanukah versus Shabbos, then Shabbos has that aspect more than Chanukah, and therefore the Shabbos candles come first before the Chanukah candles. Now the Rebbe says that just an actual directive, understandably from this whole discussion, that if the entire year there is a need, there's a virtue in encouraging women, and especially women, but also, women and young children, young girls who are of age that are able to make a blessing on the candles, to light Shabbos candles, says the Rebbe, how much more so when it comes to Chanukah. The Shabbos and Chanukah especially, there's a special virtue in encouraging them to do so, because we see over here from the Rambam that there's a special connection, as we just explained, between Chanukah and Shabbos, the candles of Chanukah and the candles of Shabbos. Just note that this Sicha was said in the time, in that era, when the Rebbe was very strongly pushing this initiative, which at the time was an initiative of Miftzah Neshek, of the campaign of encouraging Jewish women and daughters, young girls, to light Shabbos candles.